Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to yet another edition of SFOF Fiscal Focus. We started this series earlier in the calendar year, our opportunity to highlight our state treasurers and state auditor members from around the country. We've got a special treat for you today. We took a little bit of a break in May. Hopefully y'all enjoyed a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. And we are joined today by Arizona Treasurer Kimberly. But before we get started, I want to just give you a couple housekeeping announcements. First, we are moving full speed ahead with our in-person Summer National Meeting in Salt Lake City, July 27th through the 30th. There's been some back and forth trying to decide whether or not we were going to provide a virtual broadcasting opportunity for those corporations that weren't traveling yet. And we've made the decision not to do that. And the reason why is because 80% of you are now coming. And so we feel like we've got a super majority, way more than a super majority of folks who are attending in person. And we're super excited about it. So thank you. Make sure that you have reserved your hotel rooms. The room block is about to fill. We're combined with the ALEC National Meeting this year. And so we're expecting to have a total between us and ALEC, almost 1,200, 1,300 attendees. So it's going to be a big event, lots of opportunities. And so we're really super excited for those of you that are coming and attending. If you have any questions, feel free to email me after this event and be happy to answer them for you. Also in the coming weeks, just a reminder, June 8th, we'll be coming back here for Fiscal Focus with Auditor Mike Harmon from the Commonwealth of Kentucky. June 15th with Mississippi Treasurer David McRae. June 22nd with Idaho Treasurer Julie Ellsworth. And then on June 29th, we will have Utah Auditor John Frugal Dougal joining us. So we've got a lot going on here. But I want to start again by welcoming Arizona Treasurer Kimberly Yee, and I'm going to read her short bio for just a second. As State Treasurer, Kimberly Yee oversees the cash management of Arizona's $40 billion state budget and payments to agencies, local governments, and schools. Upon taking office in January 2019, assets under management were at $15.4 billion. Today, assets under management stand over $23 billion, an increase of over 50% in just 2 years. Treasurer Yee led the effort to pass a state law requiring students to have financial education in high school before graduation, and was the first state treasurer to have visited all 15 counties in Arizona during her first year of her term. Born and raised in Arizona, Treasurer Kimberly Yee is the first Asian American elected to a statewide office in Arizona's history. She's the first Chinese American Republican woman to win a major statewide office in the history of the United States. She served for 8 years in the Arizona legislature in the House and Senate. She also served as Senate Republican Majority Leader, the second woman elected to this position in Arizona's history, following U.S. Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, who served in the position in 1973, 44 years earlier. Treasurer Yee has been named one of the nation's 25 most influential women in state politics by Congressional Quarterly's Roll Call. She was also featured nationally in Lifetime Television's Her America, featuring one woman from each state making a difference in America. She's a past recipient of the Legislator of the Year Award by the Arizona Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Prior to elected office, she worked in the administrations of 2 Republican governors, Pete Wilson and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and former State Treasurer Dean Martin. Kimberly Yee is a graduate of Pepperdine University, where she earned degrees in English and political science. She holds a master's degree in public administration from Arizona State University, where she was a member of the Honor Society Phi Kappa Phi. She is married and has 2 children. Everybody, please give a nice virtual hand to Arizona Treasurer Kimberly. Thank you for joining us, Treasurer.
Thank you so much, Derek. So glad to be with you all. Good morning.
Well, good morning. Good morning. And
or good afternoon to some of you.
I know this time change thing is always a little tricky, but we're really glad you're here. Appreciate your flexibility and appreciate everybody taking the time to come on to hear you today. So why don't you start off, Treasurer, by giving us a little bit of overview of the office. I know, we say every treasurer's office is a little bit different. And I'd also like to ask you, you've got this great history of public service. What is it who instilled in you this idea that public service was this noble profession and that you should be in a position to give back like this?
Well, thank you. I'll start with that question first, and then we'll roll into my office at the State Treasury in Arizona. First, thank you again for having these wonderful Fiscal Focus meetings. I just so enjoy them to get to learn about the various state treasurers and auditors across the great country. First of all, my mother and father really instilled in me the importance of public service. And being born and raised here in Arizona, my mother was a public school teacher in the elementary grades for 38 years, teaching in the very same South Phoenix school district that she went to school and graduated from, even though it was 45 minutes away from our North Phoenix suburbs. These were hard to teach children in one of the lowest income school districts in the entire state. And they needed not only strong teachers, but those who loved them because they didn't have that consistency at home. Oftentimes, our dinner table conversations were about those children throughout my entire childhood. So I really grew a heart to just have this passion for education, especially those who are in those specific school districts that needed that special assistance. And my mom, I remember having an early conversation with her saying, well, Mom, you travel 45 minutes to work in the middle of traffic. The cars don't move, and then back home. And by the time she would get home, it might be 6 o'clock at night, having to make dinner for the kids and do all of that at home. And I said, you would probably get more money if you were, in a neighborhood school just down the street and just have to drive a few minutes away. But no, she wanted to teach those very children. And my sisters and I would bring, to school, her school, our extra clothes, and we would collect them from people at church. And she had a little clothing closet there because oftentimes they would come to school without the proper wardrobe. And then my father, who I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and they had a little hand laundry business in the heart of downtown Pittsburgh. They worked really hard to have that store, and he served in the Army. And so his public service was very young, in his earlier days. But just all of that really taught me at a young age how important it was to give back to the very communities that have given so much to us. And so in choosing the avenue of public service, it really was a professor at Pepperdine University. It's a small Christian school, as you know. They really get to know their students in those small settings. And I remember him saying, before you go off to law school or whatever you're going to do after college, why don't you take a year and do something with the Executive Fellowship Program in California? And it really did create a path and a passion for me to find out how important it was to make a difference in public policy, making those laws, going around the table and talking about ideas and creating better laws that help the entire state. And so I worked for Pete Wilson in my earliest career. He was the governor of California, and came back home and worked for the State Senate Education Committee as a research analyst. But then Arnold Schwarzenegger became the governor of California, and I worked as his deputy cabinet secretary. All of those experiences taught me, sort of behind the scenes, how important it was to have really good people in government, making those laws, really helping, the state in so many ways. And what a difference it was when I came back home to Arizona. My dear friend, Dean Martin, was the new state treasurer of Arizona. This was 15 years ago. And I worked on his staff for his 4 years in office. And who would have thought that it was, preparing me to later become the state treasurer of Arizona. And now I manage that very office. We have 30 employees. We have an internal investment team that does amazing work. We manage not only $40 billion in the state's cash flow throughout the agencies, but we also invest funds for local governments in our local government investment pools. We started with 15.4 billion in assets under management upon my taking office in January of 2019. Today, I have to update that bio you read, Derek. We're over 24 billion today as it stands. So it's a 60% increase in 2 years. And that's in the middle of COVID. It means that our revenues are growing strong. And we also have increased the assets under management in our local government investment pools by over 30% in 2 years as well. That is a huge difference, not only in how we have managed those funds internally, but we've also built new relationships, continued relationships with our local government partners. As you read earlier, I visited all 15 Arizona counties on my first year in office. We actually did that within 6 months. And in visiting those small and large counties across our state, I learned that the face-to-face visits with our local leaders, their mayors, council people, county officials, they had never visited with a statewide elected state treasurer in all of their years. One in particular was in Southern Arizona. And over the time he worked as the city council person, he was born and raised in Marana, now mayor, 32 years, he said he had never seen a statewide official ever stop in his town to talk about their local government and money. And that really shared with me the importance of growing these relationships throughout the entire state, because as statewide officials, that's who we represent. It's not the county we sit in, because that's a comfort, zone. You have to get out and visit every single corner. And that really has, I believe, increased our assets under management, because they trust us with their funds, and we've been able to provide them more options in our portfolio that work best for their needs. We've also created a wonderful setting for financial education. I know that's something that is near and dear to many of our state treasurers across the country. But one of the things that I learned when I worked for Dean Martin, again, 15 years ago, was visiting our classrooms. And one of the most important memories I remember having was going to a local university. They were having orientation, and oh my goodness, there were so many credit card companies lined up, ready to sign those young students up for their first credit cards. And when I went to speak about the importance of financial education in that room, I asked them, how many of you have ever, just got your first credit card and signed up? And many of them raised their hands. And I said, well, how many of those same hands that were raised ever had a class in financial education? Those hands weren't raised. And that taught me again early on when I worked for the state treasurer of Arizona 15 years ago, that we really had some work to do. So I devoted my time in the state legislature to bills that advanced financial education, putting them in the state standards from K through 12, from a piggy bank savings opportunity as a kindergartner to learning about balancing your checkbook in high school. And so one of the first bills we put on our agenda for my administration in 2019 was that law that you had mentioned about making sure our high school students have at least one semester of financial education before they graduate from high school. But we also put together that task force of financial literacy experts around the state, and we advanced this even beyond our students. Now we are looking at military and veterans, as well as our senior citizens, those who are from vulnerable families. And one of the bills we passed last year, even in COVID, was to advance those families who are on state subsidies. So they may be on government assistance. And we looked at a law out of New York. So we wanted to provide them a workforce opportunity to learn about financial education while they're doing their requirements to be on those state subsidies. And they are now having that important education before they get off of the government roles, so that when they come back into self-sufficiency, they'll have those important skills to have on hand. And we also added that the state treasurer's office be the statewide office in Arizona to advance the awareness of financial education, so that if I move on one day and I'm not there in the passions, maybe not inherent in the next person who comes in, they actually have to have it on the books. And so they are required now out of our state treasury to advance the awareness of financial education.
That's fantastic. And, financial education is definitely something that many of our state treasurers and state auditors are very involved with in their states. I have to put a plug in for our Smart Women, Smart Money event virtually is this Friday in Kentucky, actually, with Kentucky Treasurer Allison Ball. Feel free to register for it. It's free. But one of the questions that I had for you about the empowerment requirement for high school students, and this is something that we do hear about from time to time as states are floating a bill like yours, was that there was an extremely large amount of pushback from educators in terms of, too many things that are being asked of teachers today, not enough hours in the day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How did you overcome that?
Mm. Well, it actually took a long time because remember when I served in the legislature, I started passing these bills. But we hit some roadblocks along the way in those efforts. One example was we tried to put this in our elementary grade levels as well, and a class requirement. Now, a class is more than a semester, as you know. And we worked with our local banks and our credit unions, advocates from across the state. A number of individuals came and brought this to the legislature, and we advanced it out of the state Senate with bipartisan support. And then we went over to the House of Representatives, and it went to a committee on education. And all of a sudden, those commitments that we had from school teachers who were actually there representing, they changed their dialogue from support to, we have too much on our plate. This is an unfunded mandate. Our teachers are uncomfortable teaching this because they don't know how to manage their funds either. And, all of these were new, issues that we had to deal with. And unfortunately, that bill never got to the finish line that particular year. So we have hit these very same issues in the state of Arizona, but we kept pushing. And I had to take a look at where our laws were, because some school districts do okay. They do have options for students. But one of the things we needed was an incentive. And so for those states that might be dealing with this, maybe do a step-by-step approach, as I did here in Arizona, which was, if you don't have the support to make this a requirement right off the bat, let's put some incentives on the books. This is, again, local control. So local school district governing boards can have this option. But what I did was I put a new law on that requires the state to put on your diploma in high school. It's a seal that says you have passed or have become a proficient in financial education in some fashion. So whether they took that class that was offered as an elective, or whether they took like a business class that allowed for them to learn these same skills, they would have that special seal on their graduation certificate that allowed for them to be recognized, but also push them into those types of classes. So there are ways to do this without the actual requirement. And we took a look at our law with the State Board of Education said you have to teach economics in one semester in high school. So look at your state laws or even your policies from the State Board of Education and see if you have that econ requirement. If you do what we did, which is you take a look at econ and you expand it so that local districts can teach econ and financial education in the same semester. You don't tell them what percentage to teach because, again, local control, but you have it in the same semester. So in some school districts, they'll teach just a little bit of econ and more of financial education, but we leave that up to the school district.
That's fantastic. And I think we need to ship a few congressmen from Washington back to Arizona to take the high school graduation class.
That's right.
But I digress. We'll move forward. Yes. Treasurer, I know you have a couple of staff members here. Would you like to introduce them and explain a little bit of their purview of the office?
Yes, I have my Deputy Treasurer, Mark Swenson, on the call, and he deals with many of our policy issues. He's in charge of our investment team, our investment accounting team, and our research and legislative and communications office. Mark, if you want to wave. And then also we have Hannah Rohr, who is our public information officer. She does excellent work in all communications related issues. Plus, she built our website. So please take a look at aztreasury.gov and az529.gov. I want to talk a little bit about that because Hannah does an amazing job in our 529 program. We previously, as I came in as treasurer, did not have the 529 under the jurisdiction of the state treasurer's office. So when I went to these national conferences that were held and they had the 529 panel, I really couldn't do much because I didn't manage that program, but I wanted to. So I spoke to our current governor, who was the former state treasurer of Arizona many years ago, about this opportunity. And he immediately knew what I was talking about because the 529 program, as we know, is managed by a majority of state treasurers across the country. And ours was packed away in this tiny little commission office. And I just didn't see it really getting the traction that it needed to. So we moved it to the state treasurer's office in 2020, and it came over officially on October 1st of last fall. That's just 7 months ago. And since then, we have grown our accounts to 7,654 new accounts in those short 6 months. And we also have increased it by 18.4% overall at $1.9 billion, if I can remember. Yeah, and $1.9 billion in that very short 6 months. Why? Because we wanted to put this in every corner of the state and advance this not only in English, but we put it in the Spanish language in our marketing. We are now in the process of putting this in the Navajo language so that our friends on the Navajo Nation can also have this right at their fingertips. But we also wanted to make it a friendly conversation, as we do with all financial education needs. We want to make sure that families are not afraid of this topic. And I particularly have a passion to ensure that those families who have never gone to college before would have this new opportunity by starting early, and even starting with as little as $15 a month. So we are putting together, and we have put together not only PSAs, but radio ads, and we are meeting the needs in brochures that really speak to very simple talking points that are easy to understand. And again, I think growing this program over these short 6 months really has been an enormous task, considering we haven't grown our staff in doing this. Hannah has been instrumental for Reed Bailey. Not only does he do legislative affairs, he's doing 529 as well. And so we really have hit the ground running, but it's an important savings program. And we are finding that people and our families are embracing it.
That's great. And we've seen a lot of state treasurers use that 529 program as a platform to talk about the importance of higher education,
Yes.
vocational training, all of the ways that those dollars can be used to help support higher education. So kudos to you for getting that moved to your office, because that's where we believe that it belongs. Do you also manage the unclaimed property program in your office? Do you have an unclaimed property? Okay.
We don't. That's run by our Department of Revenue, but it was on my list of asks. I just want to do one thing at a time so that we can get it done well. We do. We have that. And when I worked in the state treasurer's office as a staff member, I did comms back then. I always got a call, at least a couple calls a week, to the state treasurer's office. Where can I find my unclaimed property? So people are looking for where they can find that information. And I believe it needs to be housed in an area that is understandable, and a treasurer's office is where it should be. Also, it shouldn't be used to subsidize other people's funds. And I think that might be being done in this other agency that currently holds it. So whenever if they have an unclaimed fund, I think they just keep it. And that's not right as well for the taxpayer. I also wanted to share that on the AZ 529 program, for those treasurers or other states that are looking at it, we decided to change the name of the program because it had been called the AZ 529 College Savings Program for all of these years. And college it could be many things. We really wanted to highlight that it's not just university and community colleges, that it is, as you said, Derek, vocational school, apprenticeship programs, workforce development, and so many other things. And so by now calling it the AZ 529 Education Savings Plan, we are able to develop that narrative so that more families can participate.
That's fantastic. As you think of a question for Treasurer Yee, go ahead and let me know in the chat feature if you do have a question. And as you come in, we'll just take your questions in line of the order that you get your text done. I do have a couple more follow-up questions, though, Treasurer.
Okay.
So you seem like a fighter, and I credit your Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania upbringing. I know Treasurer Garrity from Pennsylvania is on here. So thanks, Treasurer, for being here. But tell me, you've experienced a lot of these firsts. Which one means the most to you, and why?
Well, all of them are just part of what we are and what we do, right? And I believe that God has a plan for each of us, and we don't always know what is, down that path. But I've always just relied on, a prayerful family. And as I have, gone to the next position or whatever it was, I always just did that with a lot of prayer support. And as a woman of faith, that's what I account it to. It's not really important which one was the most important or which one was the first of the firsts, really. I love being a mom and a wife, and I happen to be the state treasurer of Arizona. And I really love that God has given me a path in public policy, because I have been able to make a difference in various paths, from my time in the legislature to now my time as state treasurer. It really has been a blessing.
That's great. And what would you say is the greatest accomplishment so far as state treasurer?
I have really, I mean, as you can see, my passion is for financial education. It always has been. Even when I learned about the problems that we have in this area, when I worked for our former state treasurer, and to be able to take that on and see the difference that it has made, advance 529s to the point where we have in a very short amount of time, we are getting the work done and we're moving that needle. And it is one where I always account it to, if we teach financial education across the state, and young people and senior citizens and families are more aware of how they can better manage their personal finances, we have a stronger economy in the entire state. And so they go hand in hand. So as we get this work done, it really is not just making a difference for today, but for tomorrow.
That's great. We do have a question from Kentucky Treasurer Allison Ball. Treasurer Ball, if you want to.
My friend.
Unmute
Treasurer
yourself.
I put my screen on and unmute. Kimberly, it's great to see you. I'm so excited about what you're doing. I'm really excited to hear about your 529 transfer, because that's one of the projects we wanted to do in Kentucky. Here in Kentucky, 529s used to be the Treasury, and I think just because of neglect, it moved over to another agency. And it's the one that oversees student loans and things like that. So I was just curious, the commission that you said that it had been a part of before, what was that? I'm just wondering if we could maybe make a similar argument
Sure.
to what you've done.
It was the Postsecondary Education Commission, and it was
Okay.
housed under the jurisdiction of the governor's office. So really it was an executive office commission appointed by the governor. And in our commission, again, it was around for over 20 years. It actually was, appointees were political appointees that didn't necessarily have the expertise that you need for a robust financial program. And so looking back at those who served, they were the husbands of, political activists who may have given a donation here or there. And, that does not do a service to the taxpayer of Arizona. And we saw that. And I sort of, even when I was in the legislature, and you go through the various boards and commissions and you see, what is their work? What does the audit look like at the end of the year? I always had a question on whether, this work was being done to its fullest extent. And then, so when I came over to the treasurer's office and saw that the 529 program was housed there, and I believe there was a significant amount of funds being, taken from that program, and maybe they were not used for marketing. We started advertising May 29th as 529 Day out of the treasurer's office, even though it was housed in a different office, because we knew they needed the help in marketing. And, it wasn't for us, it was just really to help people understand that there's a 529 program. Go look at that office over there. So if you are doing that argument, what they did in this recent budget proposal, and we're in the middle of we're at the end of our legislative session, is the governor has seen that the state treasurer's office has really advanced the 529s here in the state treasury, and whatever was left over that Post-Secondary Education Commission was doing is now being taken down. They are being rolled out, so there will not be an office, a commission any longer of post-secondary education, and they're moving it to their Board of Regents. So whatever is left over, as you're talking about scholarships or other higher education related work, is going to be wrapped under the staff of the Board of Regents. If there's anything that is transitional from K through 12 to higher education, I would recommend that even the Board of Education be part of that discussion as well, because they do policies as they transition from K through 12 to higher ed.
Great.
Treasurer, just to follow up on that, do you have an ABLE program in Arizona?
We do, and I would love that to be in my office as well. It was proposed at a time where that state treasurer didn't want any further work in the office of the state treasury. And it was prior to my time. So that former state treasurer recommended it go to the Department of Economic Security. That is the office that deals with welfare related programs, as you know, and they do have an office where they have an ABLE program. So we have had joint partnerships with their office since I've been in office to advance that as much as we can help them, to market, you know, and if we can help them to put a tweet out, to put that even further out, we're helping them do that. But it's not officially in our office. And I do think that many treasurers do very well when they have the ABLE program alongside the 529s.
Yeah, they do go well together. We have a question from Dan Warren from JP Morgan.
Treasurer Yee, good morning. Thank you for hosting this today. Question for you about financial literacy, and just to reinforce that, as a financial institution, what can we be doing more to partner with you? And I was going to say across Arizona, but I know there's several states represented today. So across the country, what can financial institutions do to better support that, the financial literacy and education?
Thank you so much for the question. It is so important. What we have done in partnerships with our banking financial institutions, as well as our credit unions, is to go partner with each other on advancing this in schools, in senior citizen homes, really going together. So we would schedule visits to various locations. You would do a presentation. I would do a presentation. If it's a school, for instance, I might read a book about Curious George Saves His Pennies, while your marketing director or whoever you would choose would talk about how you can open an account. I'll give you an example. We went to a local school before COVID, and they were fourth graders, roughly third and fourth graders. And I was there in partnership with a credit union that was in that area. And I read to them, I gave them some simple tips on savings as the state treasurer. And then following my presentation, the local credit union was there to provide how you can open your first savings account. And then the students moved into the cafeteria, and there were literally tables set up, ready to go. Parents were invited to open their first accounts for savings. And they brought their plastic Ziploc bags with their change and, cash that they had earned for those, a few weeks prior. And they opened their accounts right alongside their parents. And they spent that hour as new savers with their financial institutions right there in partnership. So that's one example. But also, there are so many ways you can sponsor our efforts, from where we want to go out and advance, a marketing issue to, let's just say it's 529s. Let's say it's, financial education tips. We can go out together with maybe a product. When I worked for Dean Martin 15 years ago, we had partners who developed a game, and it was called Financial Football. And for those of you who follow professional football, Larry Fitzgerald was our guy, and he helped us as we visited schools to teach kids about advancing that football in the game. And the teams were answering questions about simple tips on savings or simple tips on budgeting. And it made it fun. But it also allowed you as an institution to market where you are and what you do for these families and communities. At the same time, we aren't there for any marketing options other than we want to get everybody, aware of how important it is for financial literacy. And these are the ways we can do it. So thank you for the question. There are so many more ways, even putting together a product. Let's just say it's a piggy bank, and it has your logo on it and the state treasurer's office logo on it. Those are ways we can work together. And again, it's important right now as we move out of COVID and we're getting back into, a regular routine. These are ways we can go back and visit these very important groups.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Dan, I'll just say a thank you to JP Morgan Chase on behalf of Kentucky, because you are one of our sponsors of Smart Women, Smart Money. So I know you're involved here. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, we do. We do appreciate all of our sponsors that are supporting SFOF and those that are going above and beyond SFOF that are also helping with Smart Women, Smart Money events across the country. So hopefully someday we can bring that to your state too, Treasurer.
Yes, excellent. Looking forward to it.
Does anybody else have a question for Treasurer Yee? Mark has been really quiet. Mark, do you have anything you want to say? You're in the Grand Canyon, I can see, wearing your suit.
Just a reminder that the Grand Canyon is in Arizona, not in Las Vegas. No, Treasurer Yee's done a great job. It's been a pleasure to serve under her, and it's been interesting getting the 529 program absorbed into our office. One of the comments I would add is in that transition, it was very apparent to myself as someone that oversees the 24 billion in investments, that the commission met 4 times a year. The Financial Oversight Committee only met 6 times a year, whereas right now our Board of Investment is reviewing the 529 investments on a monthly basis. And we have staff and our Professional Investment Risk Management Committee, which is myself and our team of 5 portfolio managers and investment analysts, are there to make observe what's going on with the 529 program managers almost on a daily and weekly basis as well. So there's a lot more oversight that a treasurer's office can bring to a 529 program. The reason it wasn't in our office has to go back to a political feud when the 529 program was first created. And the only reason I know that is I was on Senate staff when that occurred. And the senator that sponsored it didn't like the treasurer at the time and didn't want to give him any more duties. So that's what happens in these roles. But pleasure to be on this morning, and that's all I have to say, Derek. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I know you've been around for a while in the Treasury world, so we really respect your opinion. So thank you for that. I do have another question from Peg Crianti with the Census. Go ahead, Peg.
Great, thank you, Derek, and thank you so much, Treasurer. It was a wonderful overview of your program. I was curious, as you went through the state and surely met with lots of different types of people and constituencies across the state of Arizona, did you find, after you concluded that different tools or messages worked and resonated with certain communities versus others? And can you talk a little bit about how you took those learnings into your programs? I'd be interested in hearing that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, every county is unique and diverse in its own way. So you have Maricopa County, which is one of the largest counties in the entire country, to small, tiny little counties that you have to travel, 2-lane highways to get to. And we got stuck on one of them, Mark, remember? it was under construction, and we had to visit with one county treasurer to the next in the next county, and we literally got stuck for a good hour. And it was in between all these really big mountains, and there was no reception. It was very interesting. But what I'm saying is you have to have a unique message, but a unique product for each one of these local government investment pool clients. And we have a local government investment pool that provides options for our we have pools that fit their needs. But even in this time of COVID, we've been able to talk through whether they want their pooled money in a more liquid pool that might not be getting as much interest, or moving it a little longer into like an 18-month or longer type of pool, which we have as an option. But what I created in my first year in my administration in 2019 was a new portfolio option. What I didn't talk about earlier was that we manage the state land, the trust lands. And so we have a permanent land endowment trust fund. Anytime state land is sold throughout the state, those lands, the proceeds come to our office to be invested in. And the permanent land endowment trust fund has 13 beneficiaries. K through 12 is the largest of those. 93% of the funds go to K through 12. An example is we're giving $358 million to K through 12 just based on investments alone on land sales from last year. However, our investment team in our PLEDIF does these for the 13 beneficiaries. Now, our local government said, well, can we have something like that too? Because they also want to have some sort of trust fund. And so I created the Arizona Endowment Trust Fund. And this is a new product that we're taking to our local government investors so that if they have long-term funds that they want to keep 5 years and out, maybe for a project that's going to take some time, but they want to grow that interest, we now have that for them, similar to our PLEDIF. And our PLEDIF returns, you know, if you were to compare them to the endowments of universities across the country, we outperform Harvard, the University of Southern California, you know, Columbia, so many of these universities that are really big with big endowments, we actually outperform them on a 10-year rolling average. And we are proud of that work. So when we take this type of product to, or a portfolio option to our local government investors, these mayors or local council, they are thrilled. And one of the things that I learned was that when they didn't have that face-to-face interaction with the sitting state treasurer, they really were just keeping their money comfortably where it was at, even though they had changing economic development over the years. They had more money that they were dealing with from the time they opened the account, but maybe that finance director wasn't talking to the new mayor about that. So they just kind of kept it comfortably where it was at. But by visiting with these various local leaders, we're able to customize what their needs are at that time and place in real time. And it's making more for their local taxpayers to do more with infrastructure, education, roads, you know, whatever they have that need for. That conversation not only started in 2019, it continues. So we've been back on the road. I mean, we were able to do Zoom calls during COVID, but we're now literally traveling back to each county now that we're opening up again. So the dialogue is important. And again, each local county has its unique needs, and we customize that and tailor it for each individual jurisdiction.
Great question.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else have a question? Treasurer, is there anything that you wish I would have asked you?
Oh my goodness. Well, I just want to thank you for representing us as state treasurers and financial officers of our state, so that we can have a consistent voice throughout the country about these very important issues that matter. And having that forum is so important. We can share our ideas together. We can have this constant dialogue. One of my earliest friends was earlier on the call, Treasurer Allison Ball. Before I even made the decision to run for state treasurer, we were at a women's conference together. It happened to be in Phoenix. And, you know, we have been alongside together as partners. And that has been so meaningful to me, because as we go through some of these trials, as we've seen, and maybe even in this new administration, as we've seen, we can work with each other's offices so that we can advance the message together. And I think that really is something that SFOF has really helped us do well. And I look forward to the continued work as we grow our membership as well as our sponsorship. Again, the message is strong because we are in this together.
Well, thank you for that. We're honored to get to work with great treasurers like yourself. So appreciate you and your willingness to serve the people of Arizona. And hopefully we'll see you or representatives from your staff at our national meeting in July. And hopefully we'll see all of you in July. With that, if there's no other questions, we'll conclude our time today. But again, Treasurer Yee, thank you so much for giving so much of your time this morning. And this will be available on our website, sfof.com/events. Click on the Fiscal Focus tab and you'll be able to see a recording of this video or share it with any colleagues that you'd like to. So thanks again, everybody, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.